Here, read this.
Woof.
Hello everybody, Ash here from Here Read This. If you're new to the channel, I make short, literary-themed videos like today's, alongside longer, more detailed literature podcasts, which centre on a single poem, single play, single novel, that kind of thing. Usually those podcasts are between half an hour and an hour, but for a very long time now, I have been working on a podcast based on Paradise Lost, which is going to turn out to be hideously long, ball-achingly long, ball-wastingly long, ball-shrivelingly, ball-blastingly, ball-shatteringly, ball-fadingly, ball-waningly, ball-languishingly long. I'm not suddenly changing how I do podcasts. It's not necessarily going to be the form for now on. I can't wait to do more that are more like 20 minutes. It's just an experiment. Podcasts have the reputation of being obnoxiously long, and I'm just really trying to get back in touch with my obnoxious side. I haven't done anything on this scale before, so I am really excited to see what people make of it, which is why I'm making a series of shorter videos to kind of big up the podcast. And today's Paradise Lost themed video takes the form of a simple question. Why has there never been a feature film version of Paradise Lost? Do you mean, why isn't Hollywood desperate to adapt a 17th century Christian poem in famously dense verse? Yeah, that is what I'm asking. On the face of it, a stupid question, I know. And I concede that the language of Milton, his verse, is very unlikely to reach the silver screen unimpaired. So we are not likely to see Satan soliloquize as Milton originally intended in the dramatic form. There's good reason to believe Paradise Lost was originally conceived of as a play. A point in its favour for adaptation, I would say, as quite a lot of the scenes, not just the soliloquies, but the interactions between Satan and the angels, have a kind of swaggering, sort of Shakespearean theatricality to them. But authors of a certain vintage rarely reach the screen without having their language modernised. You think about adaptations of Dickens, of Jane Austen. Their language is almost always modernised, often to gruesome effect.
Oh, we're exes.
And in fact, Shakespeare is virtually the only major writer I can think of whose language consistently does make it onto the screen. So putting Milton's language to one side for a second, I'm talking more about the story of Paradise Lost, which brings me on to what I'm calling the cardinal thrust of my question. Franchise visibility. You're a hotshot young screenwriter in Hollywood, and you've got a meeting with the biggest producer in town, old Butterchops himself. There he is, smoking a cigar big enough to perch a condor on, lounging in a jacuzzi full of shaken-looking twinks. You toss him your screenplay and say, there it is, my adaptation of Paradise Lost. He gives it a sniff, he gives it a riffle, and he says, well, it's a bit churchy, isn't it? A problem we will address in due course. Sliding across the jacuzzi now, in between the ashen-faced twinks, you say, forget the churchiness. Don't even think of my screenwriting. Think of the story. Think of franchise visibility. You have a franchise here that's bigger than Star Wars, Mr. Butterchops. More people know the story of the Garden of Eden than know about Superman coming from Krypton. My main character, Satan, has more of an international reputation than Mr. Bean. Please call me Sean. Mr. Bean was my father, pipes up Sean Bean, who's also in the jacuzzi, but don't concentrate on that. Are you really telling me that no Hollywood producer has ever thought to themselves, arguably the best-known story in the world, Fall of Man, the story of Adam and Eve, is maybe worth a punt? Well, of course some have. I'm being quite facetious. There have been run-ups at a Paradise Lost film. Recently, I think Martin Freeman was involved in producing a rumoured television series. Scott Derrickson, the director of Doctor Strange and a few other films, he was attached to direct at one point. I think that project eventually morphed into the best-known failed Paradise Lost film, which was with Legendary Pictures. It had a budget of $100 million. Alex Proyas was eventually attached to direct. Lawrence Kasdan, who was the screenwriter most famously for Empire Strikes Back, was doing rewrites on it. Bradley Cooper was attached to star as Lucifer. And this project got pretty far along the line. There's concept artwork, there's interviews with Cooper, with Proyas. There's a really good video on the history of this project made by Supervoid Cinema, which I've linked below if you want to find out more. Eventually, it was, of course, cancelled, with the director Alex Proyas saying the material was just too out there for Hollywood, and he didn't see them going back to Paradise Lost in his lifetime, or giving that implication. Maybe, but personally, I think that's nonsense. I think the film fell apart for the reason that most films fall apart. A lot of films, especially ones with that kind of budget, $100 million, they get cancelled because people panic, and it's not necessarily the source material. It could be, Legendary woke up one morning and realised we've cast the Hangover guy as the devil. I don't think it'll be because they suddenly thought, you know what, Paradise Lost is too out there. I mean, it's as out there as you make it. I mean, in Bradley Cooper's interviews about the project, he's been cast, and he's still talking about it in a kind of fingers crossed sort of way.
And then Proyas emailed me back, "Satan lives," with an exclamation point. So that was the hook for me. Yeah. That experience in my kitchen. And if we do actually get to do the movie, I know that will give me the confidence.
But even if it was a bit too out there, in 2011 there was a recent precedent for provocative religious cinema doing phenomenally well. Passion of the Christ made $600 million, despite causing huge amounts of controversy, which dominated news cycles. It attracted accusations of anti-Semitism, etc., etc.
Christopher, tell me about Mel Gibson and where he's coming from in doing this.
Well, Mel Gibson has made it easy for us in this speculation. He's a member of a wacko, schismatic sect that rejects the authority of the Pope and specifically rejects the findings of the Second Vatican Council.
You can't say my movie sucked, or else you're saying Christianity sucks!
Furthermore, Paradise Lost may be Christian, it may be an evangelical text, but it's not scripture. It is, as people quite like to point out, biblical fan fiction. Meaning, from a filmmaker's perspective, you have a ready-made excuse to depict biblical action without the uneasy responsibility of having adapted the Bible. You already have that buffer of John Milton, and in the case of causing any unforeseen religious offence, you'd be free to go, "That's not us, that's Milton." Throw the old blind man under the bus. Welcome to Hollywood, Johnny. So I don't buy that it's too out there for Hollywood. Neither do I buy some of the other excuses bandied around for the film never getting made. Nudity of Adam and Eve. I mean, cinema has come up with a million ways of getting around nudity, of depicting nudity without showing the pertinent bits. I think any mainstream adaptation of Paradise Lost is likely to focus on Satan, anyway, the figure of Satan, the best-known character from Paradise Lost. But to come back to my question, I'm not so much surprised that the Bradley Cooper film failed, or that there isn't a known film production in the works right now. It's more that there never has been a feature film version of Paradise Lost. Never. There's short films here and there. There's one from the 1910s, which I'd love to get my hands on, but I'm not even sure if it's in existence. But you would think that sometime in film history, someone would have gone for it. There would be a German expressionist masterpiece from the 20s, or an ultra-low-budget, softcore homosexual vision from the 90s, inevitably directed by Derek Jarman. Pandemonium, a quivering wall of horseflesh. Tilda Swinton walking around in her undercrackers, a cormorant with a strap on. You can just see it. Or a version in the 70s, just as the studio system collapsed and frightened film execs for flinging money at the easy riders and auteurs they didn't understand. One hash-brained filmmaker takes a crew out to the Philippines to film his pet project, Paradise Lost. Eve ends up being played by a 90-year-old indigenous woman after the original star, Cher, fled, having been menaced by a gun-wielding Dennis Hopper. The realities in which a version of Paradise Lost does exist are so vivid to me that I am unsettled to snap out of my reverie and find that in this timeline, there isn't one. So who today could make a version of Paradise Lost? I would love to hear your thoughts on who is the right director to take the helm. Personally, I'd be looking for someone who is used to handling a film of this magnitude, used to coordinating massive budgets, writing characters that are in the epic vein. They are titans, they are archetypes. And for those reasons, I would nominate the American filmmakers Matt Stone and Trey Parker. They have already told the story of innocence in a rural idyll, measured that portrait of innocence against one of true evil. They have worked with many of the major characters in Paradise Lost before.
Lock and load. We're going in.
even depicting some of the poem's set pieces. They have an instinctive understanding of verse, and a political edge I think Milton would have appreciated.
Between a giant douche and a turd sandwich.
And most compellingly of all, with the Book of Mormon, they have proved that they can make blockbuster entertainment with a religious basis without alienating or excluding members of that religion.
Hi, welcome to heaven, brother. You followed the Mormon faith and so you've been let in.
In the second part of this short video series, I'm going to move on to casting this dream production of Paradise Lost. In the meantime, I thank you for watching, and until next time, happy reading.